Hey, good evening. Man, I'm looking forward to tonight. We have Mark Biltz with us tonight. It's going to be pretty exciting. We're discussing the topic of the blood moon eclipse patterns. Is there any significance to this? Well, Mark says that there is, and we're going to explore that topic. So I am delighted to introduce Mark Biltz. And of course, we have Joel Blackford. And so Scott is going to be joining us later. That's the plan. So, Mark, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. You're up near Seattle. Is that correct?
Yes, Seattle, Tacoma area.
Awesome. Awesome. And you've been running a Messianic congregation for 25-ish years. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. We started on Rosh Hashanah, literally 25 years ago.
Wow. Fantastic. Fantastic. What has been your experience? Have you seen a lot more people come to this kind of understanding over the years, or have people been receptive to it?
Phenomenally accepted to it. Phenomenally. Yes. We're really weird, though. We have maybe 10 different languages that are spoken when people come on the Shabbat. We have Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, South Koreans, Hispanics, and we literally translate live into several languages to people in the room so they can understand it. And then we have every denomination. Oh my goodness, we have a dozen denominations of people who come on the Shabbat, and then they have their own church they go to on Sunday.
Wow, that's fantastic. Wow. Well, I discovered you about 10 to 12 years ago. I had a buddy that was very much into your stuff, and so he got me excited about it. I started checking it out. I looked at the blood moons and everything, and so I'm excited to hear your perspective on this. So tell us, why are the blood moons significant, and what do they portend for the future?
Great question. I know a lot of people were poo-pooing them, but that's because they were reading other people's material who were forecasting things that I never said would happen. And then people were claiming I said that, and I never said it at all. But the reason they are so significant, most of Christianity today is on the wrong calendar. They on a solar-only calendar. Of course, Islam is on a lunar-only calendar. But in Genesis 1:14, God said, when he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, he said, let them, plural, be for, number one, signs. What kind of a sign? Think of this. That was the number one reason God created them. Wasn't for light and heat. He says for signs, for heaven's sake. Well, that's an eclipse. And the nicest thing about eclipses, no false prophet can manipulate them. Every nation from every tongue understands them. And then the English is horrible when it says for seasons, days, and years. This is referring to Shemitah years, Jubilee years. The festivals like Passover and Sukkot are only on a full moon. And then they had their month based on the new moon. You can only have a solar eclipse on a new moon. You can only have a lunar eclipse on the full moon, which is why God set them up that way.
Interesting. So you said that God didn't create the sun, moon, and stars for light. I mean, that seems a little...
No, I've said he obviously did. He obviously did. He said
not the moon for light.
Lights. But the point is, the number one reason was for signs. Look at Genesis 1:14.
Well, what do you mean the number one reason? I mean, that can't be true. I mean, that's
what it says. Look at Genesis 1:14. The first thing he says is for signs. Now, here's the other thing.
Don't. Yes.
When you realize it all has to do with the biblical calendar, he created the calendar 2 days before he created man. The sun and the moon and the stars were on the fourth day, which means he's in charge. He wanted to make sure we had a calendar ready before he even created us, which shows us how important it is. And so we're supposed to know the times and seasons. How can you know the times and seasons if you're on the wrong calendar? That's the problem.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay.
As a matter of fact, in 1 Thessalonians 5, it says you're not in darkness, and that day will overtake you as a thief. And he says, because you know the times and seasons.
I mean, to be fair, Genesis 1:14 does say that they'll be for lights. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. But it reads out I didn't say they wouldn't be for lights. I didn't say they would be for lights. I said his number one reason was for signs.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, I think that's just, I don't know why you're suggesting.
Well, I'm just saying that in Genesis 1:14. Let me go
sure.
There.
It's for a calendar. Fine.
I'll go to.
It's Otot. It's Moedim, or whatever one of those. So the festivals, days, Yomim.
That, but
yeah, he said. I mean, obviously, we had to have light and heat. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Well, but I just think it's fascinating that what he says in Genesis 1:14, he says, "Let them be for lights in the firmament," obviously, and then. It says to divide the day from the night and let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years. So obviously they were for light. But after that, he says the number one thing is for signals. That's what it means. Kind of like one if by land, two if by sea.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So clearly God is establishing a calendar. There's no doubt about that.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Yeah.
So
go on.
I'm just saying the number one reason for the lights. I didn't say he didn't create light. The sun and the moon are lights. So the number one reason for the lights, it says, is signs.
Okay. We're good with that.
Okay, Doug, do you want to pop up the first slide?
Sure.
So Mark has a translation that's out, and he says that this doesn't really read the way it's supposed to read. I always thought it was the moon was full, and so basically, let's make love till the morning. We'll enjoy making love. My husband isn't home. He's gone on a long trip. He took a bag of money with him, and won't be back until the moon is new. This is Rosh Hashanah, right, Mark?
Exactly. In this translation that says full. One translation says at the time appointed, which is at least a little bit closer, but the Hebrew word is kaseh, and it means hidden. And so the translations are just horrible in English. He's going to come back on Rosh Hashanah or the new moon. Now, what's fascinating is when you read that whole chapter, you hear about a harlot. That's the harlot of Revelation. And the other thing that you find is this. He says he's gone on a long journey. In the Gospels, there's a parable about the man who went on the long journey and took a bag of money with him, and then he comes back to see how everybody did with their talents or money he gave. There's also, besides that, you have a parable in the gospel, also in the Gospels, where not only did he take a bag of money with him, but you're going to see that she is totally enticing him away. Let me see. It said the good man is not at home. Well, there's a parable about the good man of the house who paid different amounts to different people depending on how long they worked. So this is a direct parable to the parables in the Gospels where Yeshua is the good man who's not at home. He took a bag of money with him, and he's gone on a long journey. And guess what? He's going to come back on Rosh Hashanah. That's what this is referring to.
But we don't want to be the Revelation 18 whore.
Well, you know what, though? But here's the thing. There's a big difference in biblical Hebrew between a whore and a prostitute.
Zona. Okay,
Yeah, a prostitute does it for the money. A zona, a whore, does it to convert you to their pagan god.
Ooh.
And so now you got to look at Revelation. Is it a prostitute? Is that the correct translation, or is it a whore?
I'm just my saying Hebrew
there's so much that's missed when you don't know the Hebrew.
Okay. What do you think it is? Do you think it's a prostitute or a whore in Revelation 18?
I'll let you look it up.
Okay. It'll take a second. So how about if I look it up, but let's continue on with the conversations because I just got this Hebrew book. So anyway, the main thing is, Doug, if you could pop up the next slide. So Mark, there's a history of blood moon eclipses and tetrads. So what's a tetrad, Mark?
A tetrad is 4 total lunar eclipses in a row. Now, let me give you math. If the math doesn't impress you, you're horrible at math. Okay, when it comes to statistics, according to NASA, they have 10,000 eclipses listed over 5,000 years, even to 1,000 years in the future, because it is all math. And you only get, according to NASA's website, on average, over 5,000 years, one total lunar eclipse every year and a half. That's the average. One total lunar eclipse every year and a half. So now, if you're a mathematician, what are the odds of having 4 total lunar eclipses in a year and a half? This is getting off the chart. Then, not only are there 4 in a row in just 1 year and a half, they fall on Passover and Sukkot. Passover and Sukkot. Oh my goodness. Now the statistics are going off the roof. But wait, there's more. Not only that, you find historical events happening around Israel, and they're the ones who are supposed to be able to see the signs, like the sons of Issachar, who are supposed to know, have an understanding of the times. So the odds of having 4 total lunar eclipses in a row is off the charts. But what most people don't know, not only were there 4 total lunar eclipses, there were solar eclipses, and you're only supposed to get one of those every year and a half, but there were 4 solar eclipses. There was one on Rosh Hashanah, Nisan 1. Rosh Hashanah, Nisan 1. Okay, so now add all these statistics together. Not only are there 4 blood moons in a year and a half falling on Passover, Sukkot, you have 4 solar eclipses falling on Nisan 1, Tishri 1, Nisan 1, Tishri 1. You can't tell me that that is not God trying to speak.
So do you think God,
significant events happening in Israel?
So do you think that God literally kind of forces events to hit that timing, like smack dab? This is the timing that I want you to hit. Get it done.
Of course. Absolutely.
Okay.
So what happened in 2014 and 2015?
Well, here you have an astronomically mathematical event took place. Okay. Now, the time it's only happened like 8 times in 2,000 years. The last time it happened was 1967. Anything happened in 1967? Wait. Hello, you have the 6-day war. But even more than that, God was signaling it means war. But guess what? This was actually a warning. Well, let me start here. You only proclaim Yom Kippur once a year. When do you proclaim Yom Kippur? On what day?
The
year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee is only proclaimed on Yom Kippur, right? Do you know when the Jubilee cycles are? Do you have any idea when the Jubilee cycle begins and ends?
I thought I knew, but I don't know.
No, it's simple. It is math simple. You know what a Shemitah year is if the Hebrew year is divisible by 7. Wow. Guess what? You know what a Jubilee year is if the Hebrew year is divisible by 49. The next year's a Jubilee year. Well, guess what? The year of Jubilee started on Yom Kippur of 1973. So the Yom Kippur War literally started on the first day of the year of Jubilee. The 2014-2015 blood moons was a warning of the next 7 years. In 2023, the Iron Swords War happened exactly on the last day of the year of Jubilee. So here you have the year of Jubilee, 73, 2023, 50 years apart, bookended with wars.
They are.
There were warnings of what was coming at the end of that Jubilee year. Plus, look at what's happened over the last 7 years anyway. But they were talking, I think they talk about war coming, which is what we had. And but the big event was the Iron Swords War. The last day of that same year of Jubilee that began with the war, ended with the war.
Did you see that coming before it happened? Or are you seeing that now?
As a matter of fact, in my book, America at War 2024, that I wrote in 2023, I wrote down that Iran would attack Israel in April of 2024. And that's exactly what happened. And that was based on Daniel chapter 10. In the book, I forecasted that war. I forecasted we would see terrorist attacks on our soil in the U.S. in 2024, which we did in New Orleans and Las Vegas. And then I forecasted this year, we are going to see civil riots all over the place, like what's going to happen this weekend. Here it is Father's Day, but they are planning over riots in over 1,500 cities this weekend. It's Flag
They're
Day.
not planning riots. They're planning.
Well, okay. Well,
King Trump,
they,
right?
yeah. Well, I've seen.
There'll be peaceful riots.
Oh, they'll be peaceful. Where
They're
I
not
see
riots, guys. They're not riots,
they've delivered pallets of bricks. Maybe they're going to build a tower.
How do you know this? How do you know?
Because we've seen the pictures. And
but
now
who produced the pictures?
All I know is let's just see what happens on Saturday.
Yeah, let's just watch it, Doug.
You guys are making claims about bricks.
Well,
where are you getting this?
I got it from my son, so I don't know where he got it from.
We just have, Doug, this is all fresh information, but they just caught the guy that delivered all the masks to the protesters so that they would have military-grade masks.
This is all over the news. They're catching the people who are bringing the bricks. But on top
I've seen the bricks, Doug. I live near Minneapolis.
I've seen bricks too. I own some bricks, but it doesn't mean I'm going to throw bricks at people, guys.
No. I agree.
This is so.
But it's also Trump's birthday. It's Flag Day. It's the 250th anniversary of Flag Day. It's also Trump's birthday, and he also has a military parade, and they can't.
Which we've never had before. Like that's what dictators do.
I'm just saying,
so Mark,
riots this weekend.
They're protesting because he wants to be the king. That's the issue. It's
not. I
know.
C'est la vie.
Riots.
All I'm saying is there will be protests. I'm not giving reasons why.
Mark, was Donald Trump born on a blood moon eclipse day?
Yes, he was. The very day of Donald Trump's birthday, there was a total lunar eclipse over the Middle East, which is quite fascinating.
Especially now.
But there also was a solar eclipse right before Nineveh. According to NASA, there was a big solar eclipse like 2 months before, John arrived, which is fascinating. But then we also have, in my book, America War, the reason why I said we're going to have wars, and I forecasted wars over the next several years, it's because of how the eclipses fall last year, this year, and next year.
So you're talking about the Purim eclipses?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, we've had solar eclipses. Again, we're having them on Nisan 1 and Tishri 1. And we're having lunar eclipses on Purim, which is all about Amalek. Okay. And then Elul 15 in the month of repentance. These are 2 years in a row.
Mark, I'm sorry, but that's your 20th slide on my list, and Doug won't let us go that deep into the slides. But Doug, please pop up the slides for a moment just so we can kind of show the historicity of this. So basically, some people are saying that about the time of Noah's flood, there was a tetrad. And then when Israel entered Egypt, it seems like there was a tetrad. Then it seems logical, and if it was 415 or 1447, that there was a tetrad, because I can prove that in the next slide. Tetrad occurred when Jacob died, supposedly. Tetrad when David became king, also Solomon, supposedly. 168 BCE, Hanukkah. It looks like there was a tetrad during that year. Any comments on any of these, Mark?
Well, I think what's fascinating is if you go to 70 AD, I don't know if you have that one, when the temple was...
not.
Okay, let's get a load of this. In 70 AD, the temple was destroyed, we know, on the 9th of Av.
Yeah.
But prior to that, there was a lunar eclipse on Sukkot, followed by a solar eclipse on Nisan 1, followed by a lunar eclipse on Passover. Then the temple was destroyed. That was followed by a solar eclipse on Rosh Hashanah, again, a lunar eclipse on Sukkot, a lunar eclipse on Purim, followed by a hybrid solar eclipse on Nisan 1 and a hybrid solar eclipse on Rosh Hashanah. According to NASA, you only get a hybrid solar eclipse once every 10 years. Here we have two within 6 months happening on Nisan 1 and Rosh Hashanah, right around the time the temple.
So you think the rabbis knew something was happening? Well, Rome was already there. I mean, Rome was fighting and throwing stones.
See, no one can control an eclipse.
That's true.
This is the thing. It's not up to us. We just are to pay attention and be looking up, not sticking our head in the ground like an ostrich.
So, Doug, if you could get back to the slides, and Mark will just quick comment on each one. Basically, what it seems to be is the case of, if you go back 480 years from 967, you should come to 1447 BC. And that means that Moses and the Israelites walked out of Egypt under a blood moon eclipse. Is that possible, Mark?
Well, it is Passover is the middle of the month. You can only have a blood moon on the full moon. So if they left on the full moon, there's definitely a possibility that it could have been an eclipse.
Right. And so we don't know if it's 1447, but you can see the charts here that it looks like April 15th was a total eclipse. And that, then if we go forward here, it looks like if Yeshua died and resurrected on 32 Common Era, that there was a total eclipse of, of the moon. So then he was literally, well, I'll come back to it, but basically they would have been rolling the stone underneath a blood moon eclipse for Yeshua. Is that possible, Mark?
Yes. Now, the 3 hours of darkness had absolutely nothing to do with an eclipse.
Right.
Because you can only have a solar eclipse on a new moon, and this was a full moon, and lunar eclipses are only at night. And so the 3 hours of darkness had to be something totally miraculous. But yes, you could have had a total blood moon, at that time when he died, because again, it was on a full moon.
We don't know if it's 30 or 31, 32, 33 that Yeshua died and resurrected, but it's possible.
It's 30. I think it's pretty much 30 AD.
You think it's 30?
And
okay.
The reason why is the Talmud records that 40 years before the temple was in 70 AD, there were all kinds of things that happened in 30 AD where the center candle wouldn't stay lit, the doors would open by themselves. And so, plus when you do, I have literally created 6,000 squares, and I have every year from present day, even 200 years in the future, every year clear back to Adam and Eve. And I've taken the Hebrew year, matched it up to what it is right now. I worked all the way backwards in every square. Anyone can check the math. And I list every Shemitah year, every Jubilee year, all the events that happened. You're going to find Jacob was born in the Jubilee year, died in the Jubilee year. And not only that, Yeshua was born during the 77th Jubilee cycle. And he started his ministry in the 541st Shemitah cycle. Well, guess what? The gematria for Israel in Hebrew is 541. And he came for the people of Israel. Isn't that amazing? That the very gematria of Israel in Hebrew is 541, and he appears in his ministry at the 541st Shemitah year.
Okay. So the other comment was that it looks like if you juxtapose the Gregorian versus the Julian, then if you look for the blood moon eclipse of 32 Common Era, it seems like it would have been on a Wednesday, Monday, or when we would have said Monday based on Gregorian, but Wednesday, April 14th of 32 Common Era. So it is intriguing. And if you look at my slides, you'll see that total eclipse in 32.
The reason why it says 32 is because the people who created the calendar were clueless. They didn't know math. They go from 1 BC to 1 AD, missing 2 years.
Yeah.
From 1 BC to zeros. And so it actually was 30 AD. But I know what you're talking about.
Okay. But it still works in terms of there was a full eclipse of the moon. So, yeah. Yes. And then also the intriguing thing is coming back into the fall, you'll see that there was also on Sukkot another eclipse, so it wasn't a tetrad, but it was still in that time frame. So you're saying they're 2 years off. Okay, interesting. Okay, so we've got that covered. Okay, so then pattern wise,
exactly. Here, Christopher Columbus, and if you remember, everyone was expelled on the 9th of Av in 1492. And the lunar eclipses always mean war for Israel. Solar eclipses, war for the nations. And then as a matter of fact, everyone said Israel became a nation in 48. They did not. That's when they declared to be a state, but they didn't become a state until 1949 in the fall when they were recognized. And you have the 4 blood moons there. And then, of course, you have the war in 67. But what's not on the chart that's so important is the Jubilee year, Yom Kippur War in 73, and then the Jubilee year in 2023 ending. But that's what those other eclipses
so they are
about. Significant,
obviously. And also, even to boil it down more carefully, in 1493, Columbus hit the Ides of May or March storm. Right. And so he couldn't come back until 1493. That's when he declared that he found the new land.
Exactly.
And then technically Israel wasn't winning the war until about 1949. And then the tetrad started. So God hit his marks every single time. So I want to throw this by you, Mark. This is 15, 20 years old, but Josh Elsom looked at your work and he said there seems to be an odd pattern of not blood moon eclipses, but eclipses in 1539, 1540, where you've got lions that are attacking Suleiman the Magnificent. He never went to Jerusalem, but he said, I'm going to send money down to Jerusalem to rebuild the streets and the walls. And it's during a tetrad, but not of blood moon eclipses.
Right. Well, it doesn't have to be a tetrad. Just the eclipses when they're falling on the feast days, even two. Like I said, they only average every year and a half. And if you're getting several within a year and a half and they're falling on the biblical holidays, that's huge.
Yeah, so it is significant. And there are little things that we find over the years that are just amazing. We go, wow. And then Doug does this all the time. He geeks out on Babylon and whatever else. I geek out on finding the guy being chased by lions in his dream, and he sends money down to rebuild the streets and the walls, which sounds a lot like Daniel 9, 24 through 27. You know,
well, what's amazing about Daniel 10, now Daniel 10, he goes on a fast for 3 weeks in the first month. Well, guess what? That's Nisan. That's Passover. Yes. And here he has this dream, and this angelic presence comes and says, I've been trying to get to you for 3 weeks, but the prince of Persia has been holding me back. Well, that's Iran. Okay. And all of a sudden, this heavenly messenger appears on the 24th of the first month. Well, you subtract 21 days. That means he started his fast on the 3rd of Nisan. The 24th of Nisan, you had this angel appearing, and he says, your angel, Michael the archangel, has helped me out here fighting the prince of Persia so I could come to you. But most people don't read. He says, and I'm going to give you a prophecy for the end times. That prophecy wasn't for Daniel. He was giving him a prophecy for the end days. And what is it? He says, what the vision you're seeing is Persia attacking Iran.
Yes, that's why you thought there was a war cycle.
Exactly. And he said, this is what's going to behold your people in the last days. Well, guess what? We know Persia represents Amalek. Amalek attacked, in the second month first, the month of Iyar, after they left Egypt. They also attacked on Purim in the month of Adar. Well, there's 1 month in the middle of those, and that's Nisan, where Amalek has never attacked. And so this is why I wrote in my book, according to Daniel 10, the next attack by Amalek or Persia is going to be, it looks like on Nisan 3, which is when Daniel started praying. Well, guess what? It was exactly Nisan 3 that Iran announced that in 3 days they were going to attack Israel, and that happened, literally.
And we might have an attack today because the 12th of June is the Trump day to say, Iran, you either sign or we're going to start bombing. And we don't know when he would, but the determination might be made already.
Well, there's a big newspaper.
How did you figure out? Hold on.
No, go ahead.
Figure out that Daniel was fasting in Nisan when it says it's the first year of the reign of Darius. It doesn't say anything about that.
Here, let me bring it up. Let's go to Daniel 10.
Okay.
Okay, I've got Daniel. I've got 10.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you look in verse 2, he says, in those days I was mourning for 3 full weeks. I didn't eat any flesh. And then he says, and then the 24th day of the first month, bingo, that's Passover. You subtract 3 weeks. That's Nisan 3.
Is there anything Torah-wise significant about the 3rd of Nisan?
Well, the whole month of Nisan is huge. I mean, even Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed at Passover.
Would assume so, yeah.
Yeah. That it seems to be, when you understand God's patterns, it really looks like that. Plus, they say Isaac was born on Passover, and which is quite fascinating. And then, of course, he was about to be offered up on Rosh Hashanah. But God ties every biblical event to the holidays.
Okay. Doug, if you could pop the slides up again, please. So, Mark, we've got other tetrads coming up in 2032 and 2033. Any comments about those?
Well, get a load of this. Okay. How many of you, do you guys believe the prophet Daniel was Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay, well, guess what? We all hear about Daniel's 70 weeks, and we all understand those weeks are years. They're Shemitah cycles. Well, most Christians don't understand. They go, see, the 7-year tribulation is coming. Well, guess what? They don't know of any idea when it could start. It could start tomorrow as far as they're concerned. Wrong. Totally clueless. Daniel was Jewish. The whole reason they went into Babylon was because they hadn't been keeping the 7th year of the Shemitah cycle for 490 years, which is why they went into Babylon for 70 years, so the land could rest. There'd be an economic reset. Well, guess what? That means the tribulation has to begin the first day of a new Shemitah cycle. It can't begin any day, any month, because Daniel was Jewish. So now we have to look at the biblical calendar that I promote to see when the next Shemitah cycle begins. Well, the next Shemitah cycle begins in the fall of 2029. Okay, if the tribulation does not begin then, it can't begin for 7 more years.
Question, Mark. Why are you calling it a 7-year tribulation period? Because
some people think it's 3.5 years.
Well, it's not biblically accurate. Is kind of my point. It says a great tribulation. Most people believe that's 3.5 years, 1,260 days. But
that's fine.
Why does everybody always call it a 7-year tribulation period?
Oh, because there's 1 week left, and the week is a Shemitah week, which is 7 years. Now, the first 3.5 might be kissy, but you can still call it the tribulation.
Well,
I mean, some people want to call it great tribulation, and that's fine.
But we shouldn't call it the tribulation period. Of course, there's going to be a final 7 years of this age. I mean, just by simple math.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, well, you can call it happy times. I don't care what you call it, but there's going to be 7 years left.
I call the Great Tribulation a happy time. I'll call it the Great Tribulation and use the words of Yeshua. But
yeah, well, I'm saying you can call it whatever you want. You can call it whatever you want.
Teacher, you can too, but when you're teaching people about a 7-year tribulation period, that's just rinse, wash, and repeat Darbyism.
Okay, well, put it this way: a 7-year time of trouble, Jacob's trouble. Now, I'll call it a 7-year time of trouble, and you can divide it up however you want. I just know it's 7 years, and it's a time.
But where does it say, Jeremiah 31, that it's 7 years of Jacob's trouble?
It doesn't say that in Jeremiah 31.
That's what I'm pointing out. It doesn't say that.
Well, I'm talking about Daniel, not Jeremiah.
Daniel doesn't use a 7-year tribulation period, even if we believe that's
he uses the 70 weeks, and we know there's 1 week left. And all I'm saying is, you don't even have to call the tribulation for all I care. It's a 1 week that is a Shemitah week. Whatever that
may be already
that week, it has to begin the beginning of a Shemitah cycle.
Well, we could already be in it.
I don't think so, because it has to begin the beginning of a Shemitah cycle.
And when was the last one?
The next one coming up is 2029.
Yeah, the next one's 2029.
My point being is, why are you already ruling out perhaps the Shemitah cycle beginning on the last start of the Shemitah cycle? Why are you disclaiming that?
Well, I'm saying 2022, 2023 was the start of a new Shemitah cycle.
Exactly. That's my point, is why would you rule out that we could be in the final 7 years of this age? What major prophetic event are you looking to happen that we're going to know that we're in the final 7 years?
Okay, fantastic question. Fantastic question. I understand what you're saying now. Oh, give me this. Hey, you guys have got to hear this. I just got news. Israel just bombed Iran.
No.
Hey.
Yes, it's on the news. Just came out.
Be surprised.
Okay. Sorry, people. I need to check my phone.
Listen, it says Israel's military conducted a strike on Iran. 2 U.S. sources said. But anyway, just wanted to let you know if you want to get updated. And
my. Well, we need to pray for Israel even more. Wow.
But anyway, so going back to your question, I think some people think that we could be about in the middle of the tribulation. The Great Tribulation could start in 3.5 years. Partly, I'm not ruling anything out. I'm just saying I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so, and I could be wrong, I don't have a lock on truth. But I do believe we're not, because I haven't really seen any kind of a peace agreement. And I think what's going to happen after this big war we're seeing is Israel's going to finally enter a peace agreement with death, so to speak, and it'll be a false peace agreement.
Are you citing Isaiah 28, 13 or 15 is? Which one is it, Doug?
12.
Okay.
Isaiah
Yeah, so
13 is Damascus destroyed.
true. But in terms of you're citing the covenant with death from Isaiah 28, then.
Yeah, I think there's going to enter a covenant that is going to be really bad. But here's my big concern. This month, in the next few weeks, the UN is going to vote to arbitrarily create a Palestinian state. Yeah. That is huge because of Zechariah 1, the four horsemen, the big red horses right in Zechariah 1. And at the end of that chapter, there are these four horns whose sole purpose is to divide the land of Israel or Jerusalem. And then
but Mark,
carpenters come who say that.
But Mark, that's what England and France did 100 and something years ago, dude. They took lines in the sand. I've got a friend over in Gilead right now. He's in the nation state of Jordan. I mean, and that's Israel.
Well, I know, but listen, here the problem with Greek thinking, once it's happened, it's all done. That's stupid. Patterns repeat over and over. In 2021, the quartet came into being for the first time in history. The quartet. U.S., EU, Russia, okay, and they wanted to divide the land of Israel. That is up to date. So I'm just saying that also, just like Hanukkah repeats itself in Matthew 24, everything repeats.
Well, it depends on your view of prophecy, and if you have sort of a influenced by the Rivera and Lacunza and have this 70th week futurism view. It really does, and I can tell that you adhere to sort of the party line on that.
Well, I know the amillennialists believe everything's happened, which I totally disagree with.
I'm not an amil person. I totally believe Yeshua returns back and establishes his kingdom. So,
yeah. Well,
okay, Doug, if you could pop the slides back up.
Anything.
So basically, Mark, we have the blood moon eclipse of 3/14 of 25, okay? And then we also have another one this fall, 9/7 of 25. Amazingly enough, in the middle of it, on June 11th, yesterday, we had the centennial conclave of the Luciferian hierarchy meeting in New York and Geneva, and I think it was Paris too. But anyway, and then also we had the Bilderbergers meeting, and they were cursing the earth. But on the other hand, now, the next day after that, we have Israel bombing Iran. Any comments on that?
Oh, I call it patterns repeat. You can't look at any event in history and say prophetically done over with. Oh my gosh, these patterns go over and over and over, and God's hoping that at one time we get a clue. And so we have to understand everything repeats in history, and they're all tied to biblical calendar, which is why I produce a biblical calendar coinciding with the Gregorian calendar.
It seems like the full moons and the new moons are more important right now, Mark. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. That's God's calendar.
So you're saying we need to get on God's calendar.
So there's not hardly any Christians that keep the festivals. They're not on God's calendar. If you're on God's, how would you like to be a day late to boarding Noah's Ark? All right. Well, I tell you what, now is the time they have to get on God's calendar. That's why Easter is a month before Passover sometime, for heaven's sake. They're gonna not know the times and seasons. They're gonna miss a lot of things because they're not on his calendar.
Okay, so Doug, if you could pop up the next slide. We've got eclipses blood moon eclipses coming up. 3/14, we already had that. Then 9/7 again. Then 3/3 of 26. We'll have one next year, and that's another Purim. And then 12/31 of 28, and then 6/26 of 29, and then we skip all the way out to 32 and 33 for what I think is a tetrad. And Mark, you seem to agree. So it's just interesting. These are signs, aren't they, Mark?
God said he created them, number one, for sign. Yes, he created lights first. Those were the lights, the sun and the moon. But he said the number one reason why he created those lights was for signs. Either you have to not believe God and call him a liar, or that he didn't know what he was talking about, or you have to follow him.
And so for this year alone, we had the blood moon eclipse of March 14th, and then we had the full moon of Passover coming up the next month, April 13th, and then the full moon of May 12th was when Trump went to the Middle East to start bringing the Abraham Accords to fruition, and maybe discussing the Temple Mount. We don't know that. And then the full moon again. So everything seems to be aligning between new moons, full moons, and big events are happening on these days, or the next day in this case. So basically, what? Yeah.
What's important, if you see railroad signs flashing, that doesn't mean the train is there. It means the train is coming. And I never have I said anything was going to happen on the day of an eclipse. Never. Everybody else does. I've never said anything happens on the day of the eclipse. I say they are like flashing train signals warning you trouble is coming. And that's what a lot of people misunderstand. And when you see, we have coming up right now on September 7th of this year, a total lunar eclipse on Elul 15, the middle of the month of repentance, followed by a solar eclipse on Rosh Hashanah, September 21st, followed by another total lunar eclipse on Purim of next year. These are war events, and this is why we're going to see war over the next year.
Okay, Doug, pop it back up. And so basically on June 14th, which is just Saturday, a couple of days after the full moon, on Sabbath, our Sabbath,
yes,
they're going to say in America, we don't do kings, and they're going to be, whatever they're going to be doing, they're going to be assembling, you know? Yep. And so it doesn't look good, people, you know, because LA has had problems, Chicago has problems. There could be more problems. You never know.
Well, you can tell this is not a grassroots event. This is being set up. It's being organized. There's hands, and they're right now at the White House are trying to find out who is in charge of this. And I can tell you right now, these will not be peaceful. But not only that, if I was an Iranian terrorist cell, I would start blowing things up in the middle of these protests, because it'd be easier to decide if they were the American protesters or if they were Iranian terrorists or some of these other cells.
And Mark, that's why when I was talking to my friend Doug today, do not go down to downtown Denver and participate in this nonsense.
Yeah, don't.
Oh, you got to stay. Well, this Shabbat, we'll be in our service in the morning. Now, we're West Coast. We have about, 50 cities here doing it, but everyone's going to pretty much stay. Of course, our services are live streamed. Everyone can stay home in their jammies and watch if they're concerned.
Isaiah 26, 19, and 20. Go into your prayer room and sit there and pray.
Yeah.
So this is only a few hours old, guys, and this slide is worthless now because Trump said the deadline will be June 12th. It was. And so we thought they
June
might
13th
attack
in the Middle East.
Yeah. I mean, it's just shocking how fast. The news cycle right now is
Friday the 13th in the occult world is pretty big, Joel.
Oh, I forgot about that. This is a Friday the 13th.
And it's Father's Day.
Well, that's nice too. So, Mark, who's this Mark Biltz guy? Doug, pop up the slide, please. So this is the America at War series, Sons of Light, Sons of Darkness. We seem to be fighting that war right now. And so, according to the Sweden Herald, from today's news, I believe it was, 2024 sees highest global conflict levels since 1946, post-World War II. So what do you think, Mark?
Well, what I think is amazing, when you look at the total solar eclipses, there's only been like 9 over the United States since we became a nation 200 years ago. They all happened during wartime. One of them happened during the Revolutionary War, one during the Civil War, one during the Vietnam War. I'm telling you, we've had these solar eclipses over the last year and this year, which is why I said we're going to see America at war. I think it'll be both internally, like we're going to see coming up this weekend, but I believe we're going to have terror cells blowing themselves up, and I believe we may see China attack Taiwan.
So, Doug, if you could pop up the slide. Mark, you've already discussed this, but we'll give you another shot at it. This is your slide. You created it. 1973, 2023. Mark, please describe it.
Well, here you see 1973 was the first day of the Yom Kippur War, and you can only claim Yom Kippur you can only claim the year of Jubilee, on Yom Kippur. And that was the first day of the Jubilee cycle. And then you go to 2023, the closing day. October 8th was the closing day of the festival of the year of Jubilee. Come on. These are not accidents. These are telling you God is in control.
Okay. It's hard to argue with that, Mark. I mean, obviously God has given us messages. He's saying that this is important. So get on God's calendar.
That's what it comes down to, because I'm not creating these things. Here's the 70 AD, and those hybrid solar eclipses 6 months apart, they only happen once every 10 years. Come on. So all I say is God said he created them for signs. We see they are always happening as signs around what's happening in Israel. So I am no prophet. I am more of an astronomer, mathematics, scientist guy, and I take that and I tie the Bible to it, and it blows me away. That's why I believe in God.
So basically, this was 69 and 70 Common Era when the temple fell, and you're saying, look at the cycles, the patterns, right?
Exactly. I mean, the reason why people say the eclipses don't matter is because there's like 10,000 eclipses. But I'm not saying a stupid eclipse, not in a biblical month that's important, that happens around the Arctic Circle. Who cares? I'm talking only about specific eclipses that happen on the biblical holidays in the pattern when they're multiplied. And then you actually see historically things happen. So I just look at just like they do on like forensics files or whatever, they try to find the pattern of the bad guy. I stalk God, okay? I'm a God stalker. I try to find his patterns, and when I see them, I just tell people, and they can put it in their pipe and smoke it like they want.
Okay, Doug, pop it back up again. So Mark, I'd like you to comment on this. This is basically comparing the tribes to these patterns and how they'll have banners. So this is from, what date was this? September 28th. So it's about a year ago, but yeah.
Yeah. Back in 2023, I was talking about this.
Yeah.
Now, I see Rachel and Leah as the solar eclipses, and I see Bilhah and Zilpah as the lunar eclipses. And if you'll notice, Nisan 1, basically, this is the tribe of Judah. Okay, they always go first. And so that's Leah. And then Tishri 1, Ephraim, that is going to be Rachel. So you have Leah, Rachel, back and forth. But then with the moon's lunar eclipses, here you have Gad and Naphtali. That's incredible. Okay, because Gad and Asher were Leah, and Naphtali, was Bilhah. But what's amazing in Numbers chapter 1, 9, 10, after they had the second Shavuot, God told them to get in army order. They're about to take the promised land. And whenever they journeyed, they always journeyed in a certain order. When they went to war, the east went first, then the south, then the west, then the north. And you are going to find, when you look at this order, Judah always went first. And then Gad, who was Zilpah's kid, was the last one of Leah's and her handsmaid kids, and they would hand it off to Ephraim. That's Rachel's kids. And you'll see as this goes, these eclipses are happening in the exact order of how they marched for war. Look it up. This is the order they marched for war. And here are these eclipses, April 8th, and then back to the next one, and then back and forth and back and forth. It's like Leah's first, handing it to Leah's last, who's handing it to Rachel's first, who's handing it to Rachel's last, who's handing it back again to Leah. And so 2 years in a row, these war cycles are literally happening in the same order as the tribes march to war to take the promised land. Now, come on. What are those odds?
It is interesting. I mean, he made a good point with this. And then I'll read off to the right-hand side. You are as beautiful as Tirzah, my love, as lovely as Jerusalem, but formidable as an army marching under banners. Turn your eyes away from me, because I'm saying Gog, maybe I'm wrong, overwhelm me. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down Gilead. Any comments about that?
Yeah, it's an army with banners. Oh my gosh. Here you have the tribal banners. I'm telling you, we are so there at the coming of the Messiah.
So we're close to seeing the tribes marching, maybe the 144,000, something like that, Mark?
Yeah, could be.
Could be.
Believe it or not, I always jokingly say I'm a non-profit ministry, and I mean that in more than one ways. I don't. We are a non-profit 501c3, but I don't ever claim to be a prophet. All I claim to do is show patterns, and then tell people to look at the patterns, and they can take whatever they want to take, but don't ignore the pattern.
But Mark, you're certainly a prophet in that you call people to repentance, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's the primary role of the prophets that were sent to Israel and to Judah. I mean,
yeah,
you don't have to be a future protector.
Right, he's a forth teller. So,
Doug, I sure appreciate you. I sure appreciate you there behind the steering wheel. You're that I see.
Well, you are a prophet. You're just not saying that you're a future teller, saying "Thus saith Yah."
So no, I'll never say that. It'll be more like "Thus saith I think," maybe, possibly.
or like, this is my current understanding, and I may correct it tomorrow and tell me that, hey, yesterday you were a moron.
Yeah, hey, I might even correct myself in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Okay. So, Doug, pop up the next one. The Purim eclipses, 3 in a row. Now, the first one was not blood moon, but the next two, and we've got one more coming. Mark, any thoughts about that?
I think it was a penumbral is what it's called.
Okay. So any thoughts on this pattern?
Absolutely. This is why I think we were going to see a war between Iran and Israel. That's what it is. That's Amalek. Now, I don't know if you know, but in Hebrew, Amalek means a nation who chops off heads. Okay, that is exactly what they did on October 7th. And we know God has a war with Amalek in every generation. And God was telling us, like last generation was Hitler, we are right now in the very battle of Amalek that will happen in this 100 years. And I believe this is the last battle God will have with Amalek before he returns.
Hound and harass Amalek, right? Or, Amalek.
Yeah, right. And Amalek attacked first. In ER, then the next time at Adar, and this time it's in Nisan. And it says in Kings, spring is the time when nations go to war.
So, Mark, I'm sorry, we covered this about an hour ago, but this is when you said Daniel 10 was about Daniel's fast beginning, and then the angel appears. So,
exactly. And we had a solar eclipse last year on Nisan 1. And then at Passover, we also had the sign in the heavens with the comet. I mean, come on. God said the sun, moon, and the stars are the heavenlies. And we are in the midst. Of course. Oh, my goodness. Wow. You're always free to. I give all my PowerPoints away, and so everyone.
Well, I'm citing you. You're cited on each one, Mark. I love what you do. You
can always cite me. You can always use my stuff. We give everything away. Yeah. Because our thing is, we want people to know. We want the church to wake up.
But that slide looks like what's coming this weekend. People amassing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I said. We're going to have political riots. I believe we're going to due to anti-Semitism. Do you know why all these college campuses are having these anti-Semitic problems? Most people don't know. The largest publisher of college textbooks is Pearson Publishing out of the United Kingdom, and they're owned by Qatar. Qatar has been the largest Muslim Brotherhood promoter, hater of America. They buy everybody. It's always about the money. And Pearson Publishing has been publishing not only our college textbooks, but our high school textbooks, and they're owned by Qatar. This is why all the anti-Semitism, and they pay for the professors.
Yes. Any thoughts on the 7-year time frame between the solar eclipses from 2017 to 2024, and then also the one between that made an Aleph and a Tav? Any comments about that, Mark, at all?
Well, one of the amazing things about the one that went through Houston, the April 8th, 2024, well, actually it went through what's called the Texas Triangle. The largest amount of human trafficking takes place in that triangle. Okay. And there was a city called Nineveh, I believe, that it went through. Yes. But I really believe, again, nothing happened, but I never said anything was going to happen on those days. I'm saying, like the flashing lights of a train, we're going to see over the next year, 2 years, all kinds of hell break loose. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Okay. And you're basing that off Daniel 10, and I see your numbers in
not
Daniel
just
10.
Daniel 10, but all the patterns of the eclipses. Those mean war. Solar eclipses refer to nations, and the lunar eclipses to Israel. And we are in the middle of all of that. And plus, I believe, now again, this is my personal opinion. I could be completely wrong, but I believe the tribulation is going to start in the fall of 2029. And these are those wars that are going to happen right beforehand. Because the reason why is people don't repent in the good times. People only repent during war.
Now, Mark, again, when you say tribulation, are you talking about tribulation or the? Let me finish my question. Or are you talking about the final 7 years of this age?
No, I think that these wars that are coming are precursors to the final week.
But my okay. So again, when you say tribulation, you're looking at it being 7 years.
A time of trouble. Maybe I should never use tribulation. I'll say Jacob's trouble.
Well, I mean, there's obviously a final 7 years of period, no matter what you believe about Daniel 9:27.
Exactly.
We can agree on that.
The final 7 years is going to start in the fall of 29.
Well, Mark, I think we could have started already, and the only big sign I'm looking for, because I think everything is getting set up, is the abomination of desolation. And that could happen. That could happen next Passover.
Yeah, well, I know the head of the Temple Mount project, and I've seen all the blueprints, and everything is ready. But the thing is this: they have to have the red heifer. There can never be a temple without the red heifer. And I've been to Shiloh. I've seen the red heifers just last month. They're unqualified, not disqualified. They're unqualified, but they may be requalified. I know the guy who brought them. I met him. I met with rabbis. And what is fascinating to me is the prophecy. I think it's in Jeremiah 31 or maybe in Ezekiel, but it talks about, I think it's Ezekiel, but God is going to sprinkle clean water on them, and then he'll give them a new heart, a heart of flesh. I believe when they get the ashes of the red heifer is the next thing to be fulfilled. And I believe many of the Jews want to be sprinkled with those ashes of the red heifer. And I wouldn't be surprised if when that happens, a revelation occurs to all of them.
Did you bring a tweezers with you, Mark, when you went to see the red cows? Did you bring a tweezers to maybe pluck some hairs out, white hairs?
Well, we can only see them behind a glass wall, but a plexiglass glass wall. But they could fall out on their own, and then they'd be okay again. So they're just waiting to see. The problem is if they get too old.
True.
Now, Mark, when you're talking about what you're talking about, the rabbinic laws that aren't necessarily scripture, though.
Well, no, I know what you're talking about, but if there's going to be a temple, they're going to follow the rabbinic laws.
I think that's
of course they are. But well, Joe, hold on a second. This is a round table, okay? Doug's sitting over there, hadn't said a word, bless his heart. We're having a discussion, not just you talking to Mark. We're trying to talk to him as well. So, as far as this, do you think that the building of the temple or the sacrifices would be within the 7 year period that you're calling the tribulation?
I don't think there would necessarily be a temple. You don't need a temple to start the sacrificial system. I bet they could. I mean, they can do Passover without a temple. They can do
obviously.
So
Ezra.
I don't know. I don't. To be honest with you, I don't know.
Well, yeah, Ezra started up. They were doing sacrifices before there was a temple.
Exactly.
They were.
So I'm not sure there has to be a temple. I'd like to know that gentleman who's never said anything has to say.
So the text says, a cow, completely red cow, it is without blemish, and upon which a yoke has not yet come. So that's complete. Okay, so basically, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but this is from Sukkah 29a.
Yep, I've read it.
The Gentiles tend to work off the solars calendar. They do. You know, January, February, March, things like that. But the God's calendar is based off the moon and its cycles. And so solar eclipses are a bad omen for the whole world. Another opinion is that they are a bad omen for the Gentiles, while lunar eclipses are a bad omen for the Jews, since the Jewish calendar. And you're saying that the lunar eclipses tend to relate to war for Jews, since the Jewish calendar is lunar.
Eclipses, war for nations. But the Jews do use both. The moon determines the monthly cycle and the sun the yearly cycle. So they use both. Only the Muslims use the moon only. And so we got to make sure that we understand Israel uses both.
Well, we look for the barley being in the head, which would be Aviv. And so then so you would say that's a solar instance. The barley needs sun to grow. So yeah, I guess you could say that.
Well, doesn't Judah, though, normally just they go off the conjunction? Are you a conjunction person, Mr. Biltz, or sided moon, sliver? What's your understanding?
Neither of those.
Okay, which one are you?
I am with the Hillel calendar, and the reason why I am with the Hillel calendar is because they're the ones who have the authority. If I were to go,
well, you just said that, but again, I've heard that and I've read it for the last 8 years. And by the way, your book was one of the first ones I got within a month after Yah revealed this to me about his appointed times. But I keep hearing people say that. I don't see any scripture to point out that we need to follow people who reject truth and reject the way and the life. And that's Yeshua.
Okay. Well, I guess the thing is a lot of Christians are clueless when it comes to these things. They don't even recognize the calendar, for heaven's sake.
Well,
I think we have to realize
you're talking to someone who doesn't even identify as by that term. I'm a disciple of Yeshua.
I know. I'm the same way. But the thing is this, we can't be arrogant against the natural branches. The Bible says
that's not being arrogant.
Darkly, we only know in part. Well, the Jews were only blinded in part. So I humbly try to learn from them.
But Mark,
I don't take everything they say as Bible, for heaven's sake.
Well, I mean, it's not being arrogant.
Believe in reincarnation.
But it's not being arrogant because we differ with them in their understanding of the calendar. That is not being arrogant.
Well, I totally agree. But it was, when you understand, it was given to them. To have
no, it was not. It was given to all of Israel.
Well, all of Israel, exactly. But someone who's in charge of Israel.
Doug is Israel.
Yeah. Well, I guess it depends if you follow the two-house teaching or not.
Well, of course I do. The new covenant is made with both the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Yah doesn't waste words.
Nope.
He was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He was talking to Judah.
I know. I understand. But I'm just saying I can't dress up as a policeman and go around and arresting people. Okay.
Well, I didn't arrest anybody. I just pushed back on you.
I'm just saying I don't believe I have the authority. I mean, you could have 30 different people citing the moon. I mean, which false prophet are you going to follow? And so, this is why the set calendar with these eclipses have been working pretty good. And so that's why I stick with them.
They're off sometimes. They're on sometimes.
I have to go to the Hillel calendar, so I'm with you on that, Mark.
I'm with you too.
It's the simplest approach, honestly.
You have to run a congregation.
Yeah. And until you get to Shavuot, and then all of a sudden, you just start inventing things.
Well, I know what your truck is.
That's because of the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
Exactly.
So otherwise, I agree with the Hillel, except for, specifically the first fruits and
exactly.
Our church was off by like a day from what they were doing, but I think it's a minor.
But watch both days. See what God is doing on each day.
Exactly. But you're exactly right as far as the Hillel calendar goes. I really think you're hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, and because everyone is following their own calendar, and we get into these calendar wars.
I know. Also, the name of God. There's you got to stay out of the ditch, and too many people jump in the ditch when it comes to the sacred name movement.
You mean like flat Earth?
Or the barley croppers, the flat Earths. Yeah, but they
Yeah.
major in minors. I've
Yeah.
got too many bigger fish to fry to argue
Yeah.
with people over minor things.
Yeah.
Yeshua's returning.
Well,
That's the big fish.
I mean, the big news item right now is Iran. Okay, I mean, this is happening
Exactly.
right now. So, according to your theory, Mark, you're saying this is all right on time, and that you were basically expecting this. Do you have any thoughts on us attacking Iran? What that portends for the future? What that may mean prophetically?
Well, like I said, all I can do is guess or what I kind of think is going on because I don't know. But I definitely think the United States is going to get involved, and our involvement is going to cause terror cells in the United States to start being activated. I personally know one of the top FBI people that are involved of the terror network here in the United States. And he said they're all over, they're in every state, they're ready to go. Can you imagine the chaos, especially if it happens this weekend? Here we got a war going on, possibly with Iran and maybe our involvement. They're activating terror cells in the middle of all of these protests going on. And that way they could blame the Democrats or whatever instead of them, who knows? But I really see this would be the perfect time for China to attack Taiwan, North Korea to attack South Korea. We have so few troops than we've ever had. And that would be the time to attack. We're already tied up with the Ukraine war. We'd be interested in the Israel-Iran war. What could we possibly do if we're seeing things blowing up internally and all the Marines have to go to all the cities with the National Guard? Who's going to defend Taiwan?
Which, Posse Comitatus would suggest that we should not have our own troops on our own soil. And, so that's a whole nother discussion. But it is an interesting point that we may be spread so thin that this might be, a strategic time for our enemies to strike in other areas of the world. And what happened with the Ukraine and the, what they call the spider's web, right? Where they had all of those drones in just incredible, strategic formation go and destroy about $7 billion worth of Russian assets. I mean, that is huge. The face of war is changing radically. And, and then of course, AI, I mean, that's still a little bit of a wild card, but it is growing so fast. I mean, so fast. In just a year, I was listening to Sam Altman from OpenAI. Yeah. And he was talking about how just a year ago, a lot of businesses were not using AI. And now they have fully integrated it because they realize that it's a very reliable tool that they can use. And, this begs the question, what's going to happen in one more year? I mean, it is exponential, the growth curve.
That's the key
of
that
AI.
Yes.
And, people have been asking me, do I think that this is the mark of the beast? I personally don't. I
don't either.
I hold to the genetic transformation thing, but I do suggest that AI is very much a part of that. And AI may help us figure out how we humans can become gods to, humanity 2.0. I'm not encouraging anybody to do that, but I think that's the trajectory of where we're going. And, it's just amazing how it's all coming together. And, my co-hosts know that I'm often skeptical about a lot of things because I like to see proof, and I think sometimes we could be on the news cycle so fast that we don't give it time to just gestate a little bit, because sometimes what looks like news sometimes isn't, and what we don't see as news originally can really become news. And, so I think there's wisdom in giving things a little bit of time, but at the speed that we are moving, there's no doubt that we're coming to some pretty crazy stuff. So it's interesting, even though there's a little bit of disagreement on what calendar we're supposed to be following, you and Scott, and I think Joel, for the most part, are pretty much in line concerning the 2029, 2030-ish time frame as to when things are going to really get cooking. I, again, remain a little bit skeptical on that one myself, but hey, God can do whatever he wants, so absolutely, if it happens in that time frame, then who am I to complain? So it really is interesting as how it's all coming to a head. And I don't know, I guess what advice would you give people if we are getting close to the end? Some people are like, well, you should buy all these different things and hunker down. Personally, I don't know if that's really the best response. But what can we do as believers in Yeshua, in Jesus, whatever you guys want to call yourselves, Christians, followers of Messiah, whatever. But, we're following the King, So as followers of the King, what can we do not to preserve our own life, but how can we spread the goodness? How can we be a blessing? How can we be light and salt in this world if we really are getting that close? What steps would you recommend?
Well, for me, it's never about me. It's always about what you're saying, helping others. I don't have a lot of stuff stored up. And if I did, it'd be to give away, not to keep for myself. Okay, so for me, it's about drawing close, Corbin, drawing close to God. That was what is so important. And then the other thing is, if you love people, you'll want to warn them. If you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it says is in the days of Lot and in the days of Noah, so will it be in the coming of the Son of Man. Well, guess what? Noah knew when it was going to rain. Lot was clueless because he represents the assimilated church. But Abraham knew when Sodom was going to be attacked. Okay, and that's where we need to be like Abraham and interceding and going out and warning people. It says in Hebrew concerning Lot that when he warned his relatives, they thought he was joking. It's like someone trying to jokingly say there's a fire somewhere. Well, you can tell if they're joking or if they're serious, typically. Sometimes you can't. But the point is, we have to be serious in warning people that Messiah is coming, but we have to show love. We can't, argue. It's not about arguing. I don't have time to argue with people. For me, either they see it or they don't. I don't argue with the deaf person over a piece of music. I don't argue art, over with a blind person. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to help. And if someone doesn't want it, I move on. But I think the most important thing for everyone is to draw close to God. And that's where it's at. And if you draw close to him, you're going to want to find his kids that have been lost.
And that is done. You draw closer to Yah by repenting and returning to his way, as you've been teaching. Again, Mark, I know I've pushed back on you some, but I really respect your work. I really respect you as a teacher and as a person. Your first book, I forget what it was, about the blood moons and God's. I think it was called God's Calendar. I still have that.
I have God's day timer, and I also had the blood moons.
God's day timer right here. That's probably
that. Yep. I think after I bought Zola Levitt's book, I bought your book and a few others, and then I started studying. Now I no longer will follow Judah and the not rabbis. I'm just not going to follow them. But at the same point in time, I do understand why many fellowships do. I understand your arguments and why you do. So again, this isn't personal. This is just
I understand. I never take anything personal.
Well, me and you are brothers from another mother, then. So
yeah, life's too short.
Exactly.
Yeah. Joel, did you have anything else in your slides that you wanted to cover?
Nope. Other than one weird thing, Mark. Christians need to get on God's calendar. So Let's show the book one more time here, And so, but I'm saying that the pagans, the witches, they are on God's calendar in terms of the full moons. They're meeting, as of yesterday, and they seem to be. Why do the pagans and the witches understand God's calendar better than Christians?
Because the children of this world are wiser than the children of light, it says. And the thing is, the devil's always a copycat. You have astrology, and then you have biblical astronomy. You have the human beings who the devil tries to desecrate. Everything God makes holy, the devil tries to trash it.
Well, and to your point and what you've taught now for, I don't know how long you've been on this path, Mark, but shortly after Yeshua returned and ascended to his place, there were already the wolves, the ignorant, the unstable, twisting Paul's letters. And then, by the 3rd century, you had Ishtar Day, the celebration of the Queen of Heaven, memorialized as a biblical holiday. And so, again, he loves to come in and hide truth
Yep.
And Israel's always done this. And I wouldn't call myself two house. I would call my house singular olive tree. All who are grafted into that olive tree are Israel, regardless of whether they're natural branch or the wild olive branches of Ephraim becoming the fullness of the Gentiles. But it's really about doing it his way, following his truth. And again, it's not through the Roman Catholic Church and their holidays or the daughters and the protesting daughters who still follow mama. They do. It's just we need to teach them to repent. If there are no ears to hear, as you said, Mark, if there are no ears to hear, I don't sit there and beat my head against the wall.
Absolutely.
If there's ears to hear, and more, are you seeing this, Mark, that there are more and more that are having ears to hear about Shabbat and about his biblical holy days, and about even about the abominations they put into their body? I'm seeing it.
Yep. And so if people have questions about the feast of the Lord, well, yeah, okay, go to.
Well, there's some people that have been asking about why we, and Mark specifically doesn't want to use the term Christian. And so I thought this would be good. One person is suggesting that we Messianics are ashamed to use Romans 1:16, that I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
I'm totally not ashamed of the gospel. I just think Christians have been misrepresenting it. Now, I'm a believer in Yeshua, but I'll be teaching about this tomorrow or Saturday, at our service, why the Jews don't believe in Jesus. Yeah. And this will tell people why I don't like to use the term Christian. It's because it's very offensive to the Jewish people. And for me, I use the term early first century believers or first century believers. That's what I use.
And Mark, to your point, we're not going to make Judah, those who love the Torah, even with all their extra add-ons and everything, we're not going to make them jealous by following the Roman calendar and the Roman pagan Jesus that eats ham and sewer rat and puppies and dogs. We're just not going. That is not going to make Judah jealous. What's going to make them jealous, I believe, and I did a teaching on this or a discussion, is when we honor the Shabbat, when we honor his holy days. It doesn't mean that I am going to practice Judaism. Right. It just means I'm going to practice Bible. And so that's why I personally, because all the baggage that comes with the religion of Christianity, that's why I say I'm a disciple of Yeshua. We're to make disciples of Yeshua, not converts to Christianity.
Yeah.
Let me just add on to that, because it does use the word Christian in 1 Peter. So I totally understand the whole argument about Christian or not Christian, and we want to be sensitive. I think it depends on who you're talking to, who your audience is.
Exactly.
When I'm hanging out with your average Sunday people, I use the term Christian because I love Jesus. I love Jesus Christ. I'm happy.
It's about relationship,
Jesus. Right? I love to say Yeshua, and this is where sometimes in our Hebrew roots Messianic circles we can get a little bit snippety about we have to say it in Hebrew, and most of these people don't even know Hebrew. They're like, show off. I can say it in Hebrew, and it's like I don't think God really cares at all.
No, that exactly.
I just want to communicate. I want to communicate well with the person I'm talking to.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when I was in Israel, I often said Mishiachi, but of course nobody had any clue what I was talking about. If I said the word Notzri, then they're like, "Oh, you're Catholic," Right. But now it's funny because now there are Hebrew rooters that are into saying I'm a Notzrim, and I'm like, well, first of all, that is a plural. It's just people are using stuff that they really don't have any clue what they're talking about.
Exactly.
And we're thinking like these are talismans or magical charms.
Exactly.
We say it in the right language, then suddenly we're going to get these special brownie
Oh my
points.
gosh, I love you.
And it's just like, let's just be real people. Let's just be real. Let's not be pretentious. And, it's okay. We can say things in English and Greek and whatever, and in Hebrew. And the point is to love the person that we're talking
exactly.
to.
And Doug, and to your point, and Mark, to your point, when I'm talking to a Christian brothers and sisters that no doubt have placed their faith, they've applied the blood of the Lamb, I will call them the feast of Jesus because they look at me funny. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, well, did not God create his appointed times, his feast on day 4? They're all Trinitarian, so they believe Jesus is God. They believe John 1, Hebrews 1, Colossians 1. And so when I call them the feast of Jesus, because they've all been taught they're Jewish feasts. I mean, I grew up in it. And I was just a prophecy geek, Mark. And that's why when I was studying these Jewish feasts. And then I found out, like, literally a few hours a day later, these aren't Jewish. These are the feasts of the Lord. These are Yah's feasts.
Yeah. I guess for me, the thing is, I totally agree with what you were saying, because I have a fantastic relationship with Orthodox rabbis, because we don't call ourselves Messianic, number one. I also have a fantastic relationship with Christians. I travel the world. I've spoken in 25 nations now, and Christian churches are always inviting me in. I don't bash Sunday church. Even in my own congregation, we have people that don't keep kosher. We have people that do Christmas. I don't care. We're here to love everybody, and everyone is at a different place.
Let me ask you something. As far as don't caring, so as far as kosher, I don't keep kosher. I don't have 2 refrigerators or 2 sets of plates, but I don't eat abominations.
That's not what I mean.
Okay.
That's not what I mean.
But as far as if you've got a brother or sister that is sinning, you as a teacher would tell them that's sin, would you not?
If that person who is doesn't see Shabbat as Shabbat, but they come at our place, or they don't do the feast, they do Christmas, they may have a problem with their spouses beating the crap out of them. That's going to be my priority. So for me, that's where everyone is at. I try to reach them where they're at.
Well, and I understand, just like you reach a drug addict where he's at, you want him to get off drugs because that's not good for him. And again, eating things that our Creator did not create for us. I mean, science has caught up with it, and it's an abomination. It's no better than having sex with a pig.
Well, here, let me just say this. Everyone's on a different path. They all had to be in Jerusalem for the feast, but some came from Egypt, some came from Iran, some came from Lebanon. They're all on a different path. I cannot make everyone walk my path or even on the same path. We're different places. So I don't try to make people copy me. I try to help them.
But we're to teach people to follow Yeshua, and Yeshua wasn't eating swine and sewer rat.
I understand, but there's priorities.
Okay.
I totally get what you're saying, because as a pastor, you have to just gently lead people by the hand.
Exactly.
You can't push them. If you push them from the back, then they fall down on their face, and then
exactly.
And Mark, self-confession.
You make a good pastor or rabbi there.
I don't. Well, I would never call any man rabbi or allow myself to be called
teacher.
That.
I don't call myself.
Never call me teacher Scott or prophet Scott or any title. I'm Scott. That's my name.
Thank you, Prophet Scott.
No.
Thank you.
I sure appreciate you guys, but I've got to run.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Yep. Thank you
so much. We're glad you could join us. This was awesome. Hey, thank you again. And people can get your stuff, I suppose, on Amazon, on your website.
ESM.us, our website, ESM.us. But I'd like to get to know you more.
Well, we would as well. So we'd love to have you back someday. And
email me, Mark Biltz at MSN.com. Don't put Blitz, put Biltz.
Okay.
But Mark Biltz at MSN.com.
Will do. All right. Thank you so much.
Mark.
All right.
Thank you, Joel.
Care, Mark. All right. We'll see you. All right. Bye-bye. Wow. Well, that was a lot of fun. That was really great. And I'm so glad that we could do that. Scott, glad you could join us. And, I think kind of the point here for everybody is that, Mark has a lot of wonderful interpretations. He's done a lot of research, obviously. And to his credit, he's saying he was not predicting anything with the blood red moons, but he was saying these are the train lights warning us of what is coming. And it is interesting that America attacked Iran today. So we'll have to wait and see what that produces, what that really entails, but should be exciting, and I just noticed in the chat that there were some people that were kind of going back and forth, and hey guys, we can't always monitor what's happening in the chat. And I would just encourage everyone, if you're going to join the show, we're glad you're here. The chat is for questions, maybe a little bit of fellowship, but not full on debates. Like I just can't pay attention to our guest and to what's happening in the chat at the same time. So I'd encourage you guys to, just take care of that yourselves, and let's keep our eyes on the Lord. We divide over so many things. This is really a time, if we are near the end, then this is the time that we would show people what it means to be a believer. And most of the time, it seems like we're kind of throwing stones at one another. But I think people are going to be won over, not by our facts and our figures and our incredible charts. They're going to be won over by our love. That's what's going to really stick. So let's make sure that we do that. We love studying prophecy. It's a lot of interesting stuff. And but if we are close, then let's make sure that we are keeping our eyes on the main target, which of course is Yeshua. Hey, until next time, God bless you. Thank you to my co-host. This was always wonderful. Have a good evening.